Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I've always believed that the most important work happens in the shadows. The world above bustles with its daily routines, unaware of the darkness squirming underneath. That's where I come in, or at least where I used to. My name's Cole Harrow. For 7 years, I served in a branch of government so secret it didn't even have a name, only a designation. Special Containment Division SCD for short. Our job? Handle the things that weren't supposed to exist. Cryptids, entities, unclassified anomalies, and sometimes worse. 2 weeks ago, I was called to London. The message was brief. Priority 1 situation. Arrival required immediately, no questions. I didn't ask any. The flight was arranged. Private, unmarked, the usual. A car picked me up at Heathrow and drove me to an old industrial building near the outskirts of the city. Grey skies pressed low, and the air smelled of rain and old brick. Everything about the place felt tired and forgotten, the perfect kind of spot for SCD work. Inside, Director Maddox was waiting for me. I hadn't seen her in over a year, but she looked exactly the same: sharp brown suit, hair tied back, face harder than concrete. "Agent Harrow," she said, "you're late." "My plane landed 10 minutes ago," I replied. "You're still late." She slid a manila file across a battered metal table. I flipped it open. There were photographs, blurry images of tunnels and shattered stone walls. Strange markings, pools of something dark and sticky, and then shapes, blurred figures. They weren't human. "Where is this?" I asked. "Underground London. Old tunnels, far below the underground. Catacombs." She shook her head. "Older than that, older than London itself." A shiver ran down my spine. "We were surveying a forgotten section of the city for structural weaknesses," Maddox continued. "That's when we found it. At first, we thought it was an empty cavern. Then the team heard noises, scratching, clicking, something moving in the dark. 2 agents went missing before we even realized we weren't alone." I leaned closer to the photos. The shapes seemed to writhe even in the still frames. "What are they?" I whispered. Maddox hesitated. It was rare to see her unsettled. "We don't know, not yet, but we're calling them the buried." I closed the file slowly. "And you want me to go down there?" "No, I need you to go down there. With a team." I nodded once. I knew better than to argue. We geared up that night. I was assigned 3 other agents: Ramirez, a demolition specialist; Clay, communications and surveillance; and Greaves, one of the best field operatives I'd ever seen. Tough, smart, cold as ice when it counted. Our equipment was standard SCD issue: heavy suits, night vision helmets, signal jammers, kinetic rifles. We also carried flamethrowers, an old but very effective method when dealing with unknown threats. Just before we descended, Maddox pulled me aside. "Cole," she said, "I'm not exaggerating when I say this may be the most important mission we've ever assigned. If these things make it topside..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. "Understood," I said. I clicked on my helmet light, the beam cutting through the gloom ahead. Without another word, we made our way down the old maintenance shafts, leaving the world of sunlight and safety behind. As we descended, the temperature dropped sharply. The stone walls around us were ancient, cracked, and covered in strange black moss. The deeper we went, the more oppressive the air became, like the darkness itself had weight. And then we reached the breach. It was a yawning hole torn through the floor of a forgotten maintenance corridor. Beyond it, a cavernous expanse that swallowed our lights. Jagged rocks loomed like teeth, and the faint smell of something metallic, coppery filled our helmets. "Radio check," Clay said, voice crackling over comms. "Copy," Ramirez said. "Copy," Greaves added. I gave my own acknowledgement. Then we stepped through the breach and into the unknown. I thought I was ready. I wasn't. Not for what waited below. The cavern swallowed us whole. Our boots crunched over uneven stone and dust. The walls around us weren't like anything I'd seen before. They weren't natural. They were smooth in places, almost like they had been shaped by something. The strange black moss clung to every surface, and under our helmet lights, it shimmered slightly, almost as if breathing. Movement ahead, Clay whispered. We froze. Up ahead, maybe 30 yards, something shifted, a flash of something pale skimming across the rocks. I raised my rifle, pulse hammering against my ribs. Hold, I said. Could be reflections. But deep down, I didn't believe it. We moved slowly, every footstep deliberate. The sound of our breathing filled the comms. After a few more minutes, the cavern narrowed into a tunnel perfectly round, descending at a steep angle. It looked artificial. Ramirez muttered, looks like something bored through the stone. I nodded. It wasn't a natural formation. This tunnel had been made, and not by any machine we knew of. Stay tight, I ordered. We entered the tunnel. The walls so close we had to move single file. The air grew even colder, and every step downward felt heavier, like something was pushing back. Halfway down, Clay's signal scanner chirped, "Sue." Picking something up, he said. Movement, multiple sources. How many? I asked. He hesitated. Dozens, maybe more. A prickling sensation crawled up my spine. That's when the smell hit us strong and choking. Rot and damp earth mixed with something chemical. The kind of scent that your body instinctively rejects. Lights out, I ordered. Switch to infrared. One by one, our helmet lights died, and the world was plunged into darkness. But in the infrared view, the tunnel lit up with a ghostly green. And we weren't alone. Shapes clung to the walls, thin, elongated figures, their limbs wrapped around the stone like twisted vines. Their bodies pulsed faintly with a sickly inner glow, as if something inside them was moving. None of them stirred. They were sleeping, or waiting. No one spoke. No one even breathed loudly. We moved past them slowly, praying that whatever they were, they would stay dormant. But Greaves, reliable, unshakable Greaves, wasn't watching his step. His boot slipped on a patch of moss. He stumbled, catching himself against the tunnel wall. The noise echoed down the passage like a gunshot. Every figure twitched. One by one, the creatures turned their heads toward us. They had no eyes. Only smooth, pale faces stretched tight over sharp bones. But somehow, we could feel their attention like a freezing wind cutting through the suits. Move, I barked. We ran. Behind us, the creatures shrieked a high-pitched keening sound that rattled my teeth. I risked a glance back and immediately wished I hadn't. They were fast, unnaturally fast. Their spindly limbs carried them along the walls and ceiling with terrifying ease, their bodies contorting in impossible ways to close the distance between us. We need a choke point, Ramirez shouted. There, Clay pointed to a narrow gap ahead. We sprinted toward it, every step feeling slower as adrenaline flooded our systems. Ramirez dropped behind for just a second, tossing a thermal charge. The explosion shook the tunnel, collapsing part of it behind us and showering the creatures with stone and debris. We didn't stop to look, we just kept running. After what felt like an hour, but could have only been minutes, we stumbled into a larger chamber. The walls were covered in carvings, deep grooves that formed spiraling patterns. In the center of the room stood something that made every inch of my body scream to run. A pillar, or maybe a cocoon. It was massive, reaching from the floor to the ceiling, pulsating slowly like a living thing. Strange veins ran through it, glowing faintly. What is that? Clay gasped. Greaves shook his head. It's breathing. Before I could respond, a voice crackled over the comms, Maddox from the surface. Harrow, report. What's your status? I hesitated, staring at the cocoon. Director, I said slowly. We found something. and I think it's alive." Static hissed in response. Then Maddox's voice returned, low and urgent. "Get out of there, now." Too late. The cocoon shuddered. Cracks split its surface. A blinding green light poured out. And from the cracks, something huge began to emerge. We stumbled back, rifles raised, but it felt like trying to stop an avalanche with our bare hands. The cocoon split down the middle with a wet, tearing sound. From inside, a massive figure unfolded itself, towering nearly 3 times my height. It had the same pale, smooth skin as the others, but its body was thicker, armored with layers of hardened plates. Its arms ended in long, bladed appendages that scraped against the stone, sending up showers of sparks. It didn't have a mouth that I could see, just a rippling pattern of slits where a face should have been. The creature lifted its head and roared. The sound wasn't like any roar I'd ever heard. It was low, deep, a vibration that passed through our bones and set our teeth chattering. Lights on our equipment flickered. Then it moved impossibly fast for something its size. "Scatter!" I shouted. The creature swung one-bladed arm toward Ramirez. He dove aside just in time, the blade carving a trench into the stone floor where he had stood. Sparks rained down. I fired, the kinetic round slamming into its torso. No effect. Greaves flanked left, unloading a burst from his rifle directly into the creature's side. Still nothing. It was like shooting a tank with pebbles. "This isn't working," Clay shouted. "It's shrugging it off." "Focus fire on the joints," I barked. If its armor was too strong, maybe the gaps between plates were weaker. We regrouped, aiming for where the creature's limbs met its body. Our weapons whined as they heated up, rounds slamming in a tight spread. One shot struck true. A tiny spurt of dark fluid hissed into the air. The creature recoiled, more in anger than pain. That's when the others came. The walls around the chamber shifted, dozens of the smaller creatures crawling from hidden crevices, their bodies writhing over one another like a tide of pale limbs, their empty faces locked onto us. "We were surrounded. We need an exit," Ramirez yelled, swinging his rifle in wide arcs. Clay scanned the chamber desperately, his scanner chirping madly. "Their service tunnel, north side," he called out. The tunnel was barely visible, half collapsed, but it might as well have been a shining doorway to paradise. "Move," I ordered. We sprinted toward it, laying down suppressing fire. The big one howled again, the air vibrating so hard it made my vision blur. The smaller creatures surged after us. Ramirez was the last through the narrow gap, lobbing another thermal charge behind him. The tunnel mouth exploded inward, sealing off the chamber at least for now. We plunged into darkness again, our helmet lights flickering from the shockwave. Breathless, we pushed forward through the tight tunnel, every sense on high alert. "What was that thing?" Greaves panted. "No idea," I said, "but it's organizing them." "That's new," Ramirez muttered. "Usually these things are dumb, animalistic. Not this time. The creatures had a leader now, one with purpose, one that didn't just want to feed or defend territory. It wanted out." We reached a fork in the tunnels. One path sloped upward, the other downward into deeper darkness. I tapped Clay's shoulder. "Which way?" He checked his scanner, frowning. "Upward path shows structural damage ahead. Might not be stable." "Other option?" I asked. Clay hesitated. "Downward leads deeper underground. Stronger readings, but also stronger movement signatures, meaning more of them." Greaves glanced back the way we came. "We can't go back." Ramirez wiped sweat from his brow. "So what's the plan, boss?" I stared into the downward tunnel, the darkness almost alive with anticipation. "We go deeper," I said. It wasn't bravery, it was survival, because if those things got loose topside, London wouldn't survive the night. We pushed onward, deeper into the earth. The tunnel spiraled downward, the air growing thick and humid. The walls began to change, no longer stone, but some strange, resinous material that flexed slightly under pressure. It felt like walking through the inside of a massive throat. The floor squished underfoot. Strange, translucent sacs pulsed along the walls. Inside them, dark shapes twitched and shifted. Eggs, Greaves muttered grimly. Ramirez shivered. This place is a nest. Clay pointed ahead. Big chamber coming up. We emerged into a cavern even larger than the first. At its center stood a massive structure, a spire of black stone that twisted upward, covered in glowing runes. Around it, hundreds of creatures milled about, moving with eerie coordination. At the base of the spire, something glimmered, a metallic object, unlike anything else here. I zoomed in with my helmet camera. Recognition punched me in the gut. It was a door. Not made by these things, made by us. Government markings, SCD seals, and a single word etched into the metal. Project Perseus. My stomach turned to ice. We hadn't just found a nest, we had put it here. For a moment, none of us spoke. The implications were too big, too overwhelming. The Special Containment Division had been down here before. Not just studying the creatures, but containing them. Maybe even creating them. Project Perseus, Ramirez whispered. What is this? I shook my head slowly. I don't know, but Command does. Greaves cursed under his breath. You telling me we're not here by accident? I think we were sent to clean up a mess, Clay said darkly. The creatures hadn't noticed us yet. They moved in strange, synchronized patterns around the spire, almost like they were performing some kind of ritual. Or maybe waiting for a signal. Either way, we couldn't stay exposed. Get closer to the door, I ordered. We need to know what's behind it. We moved low and fast, weaving between clusters of the creatures. Up close, I could see the strange details of their bodies, not just bones and skin, but bits of machinery grafted into their flesh. Tubes pulsed under their skin, carrying glowing fluids. They weren't just biological. They had been modified. Ramirez's voice was tight. This is beyond anything I've seen. It's like someone was trying to weaponize them. We reached the base of the spire. The metal door was set into the rock, half swallowed by the black resin. Strange symbols were burned into its surface, warning signs from an era long before ours. A keypad blinked next to it, miraculously still active. Clay stepped forward. I can try to crack it. Fast, I said. We don't have much time. He pulled a small device from his belt and hooked it to the panel. Lines of code flashed across his visor as he worked. Behind us, a low rumble filled the air. The creatures stirred, sensing something. We've got movement, Greaves said urgently. Hurry up, Ramirez snapped. Clay cursed under his breath. It's old security, deep locks. Give me a second. A second was more than we had. One of the creatures closest to us lifted its head and sniffed the air. Slowly it turned its eyeless face toward our hiding spot. It let out a clicking sound, rapid and sharp. The others stopped moving. Silence fell like a blade. And then they all turned to us at once. Clay, I shouted. Got it, he barked. The door slid open with a hiss of ancient hydraulics. Go, 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 I yelled, pushing the others through. We tumbled into a dark corridor just as the creatures shrieked and surged forward. I slammed my fist onto the interior panel. The door began to close, agonizingly slow. One of the creatures lunged, its clawed hand slipping through the narrowing gap. Greaves stepped up without hesitation and stomped down hard, crushing the limb against the frame. The creature screeched, yanking its arm back just as the door slammed shut with a boom. Silence. Only our heavy breathing filled the space. We were inside, but inside where the corridor stretched forward, lit by flickering emergency lights. The walls were clean metal, covered in dust and age, but the design was unmistakable. SCD construction, same as the black sites we trained in, but older, much older. Whatever they were doing here, they abandoned it a long time ago, Ramirez said. Clay checked his scanner, reading energy signatures ahead, big ones. We moved cautiously down the hall. Strange symbols lined the walls, some human, some not. As we passed a shattered observation window, I caught a glimpse into a lab. Rows of containment tanks lined the room, each one cracked open from the inside. Inside them, what remained of experiments floated in murky fluid hybrids of flesh and machine, too broken to fully recognize. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just research. It was tampering, splicing. A low hum vibrated through the floor. Somewhere ahead, something massive was still active. We reached a control room. The glass was smashed, consoles dark or barely functioning. In the center of the room stood a terminal, its screen flickering weakly. I stepped forward and tapped the console. It sprang to life, playing a looping message. A man appeared on the screen, mid-40s, clean-cut, wearing an old-style SCD uniform. "If you're seeing this," he said, voice clipped and hurried, "then containment has failed. Project Perseus was not a success. It was an awakening." The screen flickered. We believed we could control them, channel them. Instead, they learned from us, adapted. We built this facility to study the creatures beneath London, ancient, alien, dormant. But we woke something we didn't understand. Behind him, alarms blared. If the spire is breached, there will be no stopping the spread. Not just in London, not just in the UK. Global extinction within weeks. The image stuttered again. "There's one chance left. A failsafe buried deep below the spire. Activate it. End this." The screen went dark. Only a single coordinate flashed on the terminal. A location deeper underground. Greaves turned to me, face pale. "Failsafe. Sounds simple enough." Ramirez snorted bitterly. "When has anything about today been simple?" I clenched my jaw. "We go for it. We end this." Behind us, faint thuds echoed through the metal walls. The creatures were already trying to break through. We didn't have much time. Without another word, we gathered our gear and moved toward the deeper tunnels, chasing the only hope we had left. The air grew heavier the deeper we went. Each step away from the surface felt like stepping into another world, one ruled by ancient things that had slept beneath London long before humans ever walked its streets. Our boots clanged against old metal catwalks as we descended through shafts lit by the faintest emergency lights. Beyond the rails, there was nothing but blackness, a void so deep our helmet beams couldn't touch the bottom. We moved carefully, senses stretched to the limit. The noise of the creatures above had faded, but that didn't bring comfort. It meant they were planning. Learning. We weren't hunting them anymore. They were hunting us. Ahead, the catwalk ended at a heavy blast door, newer than the rest of the facility, probably added when the failsafe was installed. Clay jogged up, already pulling out his bypass kit. As he worked, Ramirez glanced over his shoulder. "You think this failsafe will even work?" Greaves answered before I could. "If it was built by the same geniuses who woke those things up, I'm not betting my life on it." "We don't have a choice," I said quietly. Clay finished bypassing the panel. The door rumbled open, revealing a wide chamber beyond. We stepped inside. The room was huge, a sphere carved into the earth itself, lined with blackened metal. In the center stood a massive console, its surface alive with shifting patterns of light. Strange machinery pulsed and clicked all around it, sending vibrations through the floor. This was the heart of Project Perseus. And standing between us and the console was it, the large creature from the cocoon. Only now, it had changed. It was taller, broader, its body armored with thick plates like the hull of a battleship. Strange markings glowed along its limbs, pulsing with a sickly green light. It raised its head slowly as we entered, and somehow I knew. It had been waiting for us. It stepped forward with the ponderous weight of a living siege engine, claws scraping deep gouges into the floor. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Ramirez lifted his rifle and opened fire. The chamber erupted in chaos. Rounds sparked harmlessly off the creature's armor as it charged. Its first swing sent a shockwave through the air, knocking Ramirez sprawling. Greaves and I split left, trying to flank it. Clay sprinted toward the console, already prepping his tools. "Buy me 2 minutes," he shouted. Easier said than done. I squeezed off shot after shot, aiming for the joints again, but the creature moved with terrifying speed. It lunged at Greaves, who barely ducked under the swipe, the bladed arm shearing a chunk out of a metal support pillar instead. "Ramirez, get up!" I barked. Ramirez groaned but scrambled to his feet, laying down suppressive fire. It didn't hurt the creature, but it forced it back a few steps, enough to give Greaves breathing room. The creature hissed a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe. And then it changed tactics. It turned toward Clay. "No!" I roared. It moved fast, too fast. I threw myself between it and Clay, bringing up my rifle just in time. Dot, the creature's blade crashed against my weapon, snapping it in half like a twig. I hit the floor hard, gasping. The creature raised its other arm for a killing blow. Greaves charged, slamming into it from the side. His momentum barely shifted its massive frame, but it was enough the strike missed me by inches. Greaves paid for it. The creature backhanded him across the room, slamming him into a wall with bone-cracking force. "Greaves!" Ramirez shouted, diving towards him. Clay shouted over the noise. "1 minute!" I scrambled to my feet, pulling my backup sidearm, a compact kinetic pistol, useless against the armor, but maybe. I fired at its face. The creature reeled, more annoyed than hurt, but it gave me another opening. "Ramirez, cover Clay!" I yelled. "I'll distract it." Ramirez nodded grimly, hauling Greaves behind cover before turning his rifle on the creature again. I ran straight at the thing, firing as I went, aiming for the glowing symbols along its limbs. The shots didn't pierce, but they made it angry. Good. It lunged at me, massive claws slicing through the air. I ducked under one swing, then leapt onto a nearby console, forcing it to climb after me. 30 seconds, Clay's voice crackled in my ear. "Failsafe charging." The creature howled, slamming its blades into the console I stood on. It buckled under me. I dropped hard, rolling across the floor, scrambling up just as the creature loomed over me. 10 seconds. Clay's voice was tight with panic. "Get clear." I sprinted toward the chamber exit, heart hammering. The creature lunged, and Ramirez threw himself between us, unloading his entire magazine point blank into its glowing chest symbols. There was a flash of green light. The creature staggered back. The failsafe console exploded with brilliance, filling the room with blinding white. I felt myself lifted off the ground, a force like a hurricane throwing me back through the door. Then, darkness. Consciousness returned in pieces. I was lying on cold metal, my helmet cracked and visor flickering. Every breath rattled in my chest. It felt like my bones had been shaken apart and glued back together with pain. Above me, the emergency lights were dead. Only a faint, sickly glow came from deeper in the tunnel behind me. I pushed myself up slowly, groaning. "Greaves, Ramirez, Clay." Static answered me over the comms. Nothing but broken noise. I staggered to my feet, leaning heavily against the wall. The failsafe blast had triggered something, some kind of pulse that had ripped through the entire facility. The walls were scorched, machinery lay twisted and smoking. But the creatures, I didn't see any. Maybe the failsafe worked. Maybe. I limped down the corridor, checking corners, my pistol ready. Shapes moved at the edge of my vision, shadows darting just beyond the flickering lights. I tightened my grip on the weapon. I wasn't alone down here. The facility wasn't dead. It had changed. The black resin was everywhere now, covering walls and floors like veins. It pulsed softly, alive somehow, spreading deeper into the tunnels. Whatever we woke up beneath London, it wasn't finished, not by a long shot. I found Greaves first. He was pinned under a collapsed beam, blood leaking from a gash on his forehead. His eyes fluttered open as I knelt beside him. "Boss," he rasped. Did we win?" I forced a smile. "Still working on that." I pulled out a field injector and gave him a stabilizer shot. He grunted but managed to sit up with my help. "Ramirez?" he asked. I shook my head. "Haven't found him yet. Clay either." He cursed softly. We both froze as a new sound echoed down the tunnel, a deep, rhythmic thumping. Footsteps, massive ones. The creature. No. Something bigger. Something worse. I hauled Greaves up. He leaned heavily on me, favouring his left leg. "We move," I said. "Now." Together, we limped down the tunnel, following the faint trail of emergency beacons deeper into the facility. We found Ramirez next, unconscious but alive, tucked against a bulkhead like he'd been thrown there by the blast. As I shook him awake, he gasped and sat up, wild-eyed. "Where is it?" he blurted. "Where's the creature?" "Gone," I said. "For now." He looked around at the blackened walls, the growing spread of resin. What happened to this place? Before I could answer, the whole corridor trembled. A massive, thunderous roar shook the air, not from a throat, but from somewhere deeper. Mechanical, alien, alive. We looked at each other. Something else had awakened when the failsafe triggered. Something buried even deeper than the creatures we'd been fighting. "We're not getting out the way we came," Ramirez said grimly. "No," I pointed down the tunnel. "There's a secondary exit. Every SCD black site has one." Greaves grunted. "Yeah, probably guarded by something nasty." "Probably," I said. Ramirez pulled himself up, slinging his rifle. "Well, standing around's not gonna help." We moved. The tunnels twisted and narrowed, the resin growing thicker, the air almost too heavy to breathe. Strange growths bloomed along the walls, pulsating sacs filled with glowing liquid. Inside some of them, things floated, unformed shapes, experiments waiting to be born. "This place is changing," Greaves muttered. "It's adapting." We rounded a corner and found ourselves facing a heavy containment door, sealed tight. Above it, ancient lettering was burned into the metal. Sublevel 0, authorized personnel only. The emergency beacon flickered next to the panel, barely alive. Clay's voice crackled suddenly over the comms, broken, faint. "Down here. Trapped. Need help." My heart jumped. "Clay, say again." Static, but it was enough. He was alive, and trapped somewhere beyond that door. "We can't leave him," Ramirez said. "We're not going to," I answered. Greaves limped forward and started prying the panel open. Sparks flew, the door groaned, and from behind us, the sound of something massive dragging itself down the tunnel. Greaves cursed. Faster would be good. I turned, raising my weapon. Through the flickering darkness, I saw it. Not the armored creature we'd fought before. Something bigger. A grotesque fusion of metal, resin, and flesh. A writhing mass of limbs and spines and machinery. It filled the corridor wall to wall, slithering forward with horrible purpose. It didn't walk, it crawled. The failsafe hadn't destroyed the spire. It had fed it, supercharged it, and now it was birthing something new. "Doors open!" Greaves yelled. We stumbled through just as the thing lunged. The blast door slammed shut behind us, and the entire wall shook as the creature slammed against it. We backed away, breathing hard. Before us stretched a vast chamber bigger than anything we'd seen yet. And in the center, Clay, pinned beneath a mass of black resin, struggling weakly. And beyond him, something even worse. Something rising, growing, waiting. We didn't have time to hesitate. Clay's head snapped up as we rushed in, his voice hoarse. "Don't let it finish. You have to stop it." I didn't need to ask what it was. At the far end of the chamber, where the resin pulsed and churned, something colossal was forming, a mass of tendrils, metallic limbs, and half-formed shapes, like the creatures we had fought earlier, but on a scale that made them seem tiny by comparison. This wasn't a soldier. This was a king, or worse, a creator. The spire wasn't just growing creatures anymore. It was building a hive mind, something that could command the others, think for them, evolve them. If it completed that process, London would be the beginning. The world would follow. "Cut me loose," Clay shouted, struggling against the tendrils binding him. Ramirez rushed to his side, pulling out a field knife and sawing through the black material. Greaves and I moved forward, weapons up, eyes locked on the growing monstrosity. The creature hadn't noticed us yet, or maybe it just didn't care. It was too busy, being born. I scanned the room for options. On the far wall, I spotted a series of high-pressure fuel tanks, old, rusted, but intact. An idea sparked. "Greaves," I said low. "See those tanks?" He followed my gaze and gave a grim nod. "We ignite them," I said. "Burn this thing before it finishes." Ramirez freed Clay, slinging one of his arms over his shoulder. Clay gasped. "Fail-safe. Second stage. It's manual. Have to overload the core." I didn't like the sound of that. "Where's the core?" Clay pointed weakly toward the center of the chamber, right beneath the mass of shifting resin and flesh. Of course. The plan formed fast. Greaves and I would create a distraction, draw the thing's attention, and set the charges on the fuel tanks. Clay and Ramirez would make a run for the core and overload it manually. Then we all get out alive. Simple. In theory. Move fast, I said, and if it notices you, run faster. Ramirez managed a breathless chuckle. We split Greaves and I cutting left, keeping low behind fallen machinery, while Ramirez and Clay limped toward the core. The creature stirred as we moved. It wasn't fully conscious yet, but it was getting there. The resin along the walls pulsed faster, as if sensing our presence. Tiny, malformed shapes squirmed inside it, eyes opening, limbs twitching. The whole place was alive, hungry, watching. Greaves set the first charge, wiring it to the rusted tanks. I covered him, sweeping my weapon across the room, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. At the core, Ramirez helped Clay limp toward the access panel. Clay collapsed beside it, fingers shaking as he began working the manual overrides. "We're almost there," Greaves whispered. He moved to the second tank, setting the final charge. That's when the creature moved. It unfolded like a blooming nightmare, massive tendrils snapping free of the resin with wet, horrible sounds. One tendril lashed out straight toward Ramirez and Clay. I didn't think. I fired. My rounds hammered the tendril, snapping it back just before it reached them. The creature roared a sound that shook the entire chamber, deafening and furious. Its mass turned toward me. Good. I ran. "Greaves now," I shouted. He slapped the detonator. The first fuel tank exploded in a fireball, searing the chamber in white-hot light. A shockwave staggered the creature, ripping chunks of resin and metal from its forming body. The second explosion followed, rocking the entire underground facility. Flames engulfed the resin, lighting it up like dry paper. The malformed creatures within it shrieked and burned, twisting in the fire. The creature howled in pain and rage, its form collapsing inward, lashing out blindly. At the core, Clay shouted, "It's not enough. I need more time." "Buy it!" I yelled. Greaves and I opened fire, pouring everything we had left into the creature's burning body. Armor-piercing rounds, incendiary grenades, everything. The chamber filled with smoke and flame. The heat was unbearable, but still the creature fought, dragging itself toward the core, toward Clay. Greaves shouted suddenly, voice sharp, "Incoming!" I turned just in time to see a massive tendril slicing through the smoke too fast to dodge. It hit Greaves square in the chest, lifting him off his feet and slamming him into the far wall. He didn't get up. "Greaves!" I screamed. No answer. Ramirez fired wildly, trying to hold the creature back. Clay's voice, desperate. "Almost. There!" The creature, even wounded and burning, was relentless. It pulled itself forward, a mass of rage and pain. I ran toward it, emptying my pistol until the slide locked back. I picked up Greaves's dropped rifle without slowing down, firing again, screaming in defiance. If this thing was going to take us, it was going to bleed for it. Finally, Clay slammed his fist onto the core panel. A low, deep rumble shook the ground. "Run!" he shouted. We didn't need telling twice. Ramirez grabbed Clay. I grabbed Greaves's body, hauling him onto my shoulder, gritting my teeth against the weight. We sprinted. Behind us, the core began to glow brighter and brighter, the walls shaking, metal screaming under the strain. The creature roared one final time, a sound of pure, undiluted rage, and lunged after us. The tunnels ahead buckled and split as we ran. Resin rained down from the ceiling. Beams collapsed. The whole facility was coming down. We reached the emergency access shaft just as the core detonated. The blast lifted us off our feet, hurling us up the shaft in a maelstrom of fire and debris. I had one brief glimpse of the creature torn apart, disintegrating into ash and dust, before the light swallowed everything. I came to gasping for breath, coughing up dust and blood. Above me, the night sky stretched wide and clear stars blinking down through a ragged hole in the earth where the blast had torn open the street. Sirens wailed in the distance. Helicopters circled overhead. The ruins of the Special Containment Division's underground facility smouldered below us, a smoking scar beneath the city. Somehow, we'd made it. I rolled over painfully, searching. Ramirez was lying nearby, battered but conscious, waving weakly. Clay was a few feet away, his leg twisted at a bad angle but alive, breathing. Greaves. I looked down at the man I still carried. He was cold, still. His armor cracked, blood seeping from wounds no field kit could fix. Greaves hadn't made it out. I lowered him to the ground gently, feeling the weight of everything we had lost, pressing down harder than the rubble. After a while, emergency crews arrived, black-clad SCD medics and containment officers pouring in, weapons raised, scanning the ruins for any surviving threats. They were too late, or maybe just in time. An SCD officer in a white tactical coat approached, his face hidden behind a gas mask. "You're Anderson," he said, checking a tablet. "Team leader." I nodded numbly. "You did good work," he said. "Containment was the priority. You achieved that." I didn't say anything. Behind him, teams began setting up portable barriers, scanning the wreckage, setting charges to collapse what was left of the underground chambers. "Is it over?" I croaked finally, voice raw. The officer hesitated. Then he looked past me toward the rising smoke, the crackling fires deep underground. "Nothing's ever really over," he said quietly. "They patched us up the best they could on site. Clay was taken into surgery immediately. Ramirez had 3 broken ribs and a dislocated shoulder. I refused evacuation until I saw them both stable. Only after that did I allow myself to sit down, really sit down, and let the full weight of it crash in." Greaves was gone. Most of Site 9 was gone. The things we fought, the creatures born in darkness beneath London, they were gone too. But at what cost? And was it really over? A few hours later, one of the containment officers pulled me aside. "We found something," he said. He led me to a secure tent near the perimeter, where a small metal crate sat on a table. Inside, cushioned in foam, was a fragment of black resin still pulsing faintly, still alive. I stared at it. "What do you want me to do with this?" I asked, already knowing the answer. The officer simply said, "Report." So here I am, writing it down, recording everything. For the next poor soul who gets called into the darkness and thinks they understand what they're dealing with. They don't. We didn't. Beneath London, something ancient stirred. Something we barely stopped, Something that isn't gone. Just waiting, regrowing, learning. We lit a match underground and thought the fire died with us. But deep in the bones of the city, beneath the concrete and the iron and the blood, something remembers. And one day, it's going to wake up again. And next time, we might not be so lucky.